phenomena that came out of. It was probably influenced by it gradually happened that people started to write their names on public walls and trains and buses in the organized fashion. It was not just a random act. It became almost a sport, and this probably starts to surface in, say about 1967, 1968. And other kids there's this one guy who's well known as being the first visible graffiti name and number, because the format for what has become subway graffiti or New York style graffiti is a nickname accompanied by a number, like Ace 137 because he lives on 137th Street. Or 144 because he came from 144th Street. Or Snake 1 because he was the first snake, there were other snakes, but he was Snake 1. So the way it evolves is one kid sees another kid doing it, and he wants to get in on the action, and this is how this phenomenon grows and grows and grows. So by the early 70s, 72, 71, this had exploded already. There was like hundreds, maybe thousands, but definitely hundreds of kids writing their names around New York City. The subway became like our internet, a guy from, say, 207th Street up in Inwood, on the A train. The A train goes from all the way from Inwood all the way out to Howard Beach and Ozone Park, which is JFK area. That's a lot of territory. Through that, it passes through Harlem, it passes through the West Village and Chelsea, and down into Bed-Stuy and the Rockaways and into East New York. It goes through a lot of territory. Remember, this is early 70s. We don't have an internet, but this becomes our internet because people are seeing this guy Frank 207.
You created even your own way of communication.
Mm-hmm. That's part of it. Right? That's part of it. During this development, we start. It becomes an actual subculture, with rules, with a way of dressing, a way of talking. We had our own lingo. It was like, this is a phenomenon that, and it's all kids, which I stress the fact that this is what's amazing about street culture is that these are, inner city kids, we're kids. Like, the average kid is between the age of 11 and 16. We're not talking about adults, but we're doing something, we're not even aware of what we're creating. We create a slang, like terminology and stuff like that, like to tag or to hit, we called it hitting back then, which was actually applying your name to a wall, So there was all this terminology, racking up, which was how we acquired our spray paint and materials we used to steal. That was part of the bravado of it. You had to. Nobody wanted to. Even if you did go and buy it, you didn't tell anybody that you bought it because you're going to be made fun of, right? So there's a lot of attractive things to young men. This is a very male-oriented thing in the beginning, in the early 70s. There was a few girls. There was Barbara and Eva 62, the Charmin 65. But they were like tough, chicks. They weren't like girly girls. And so it was very male-oriented. So the attractive elements were camaraderie, competition, and adventure. It was a completely deviant and delinquent act. There was nothing. If you go out and write on somebody's property, you're either going to get beat up or you're going to get arrested. So it's not like you know, so it wasn't like this socially accepted thing. It was very, very taboo. I mean, it was, my parents hated it. Everybody's parents hated it.
People get left, sorry. Even like people get like chased, like people
all the time.
arrested.
Getting chased, yeah.
Back
That was part of it, and it was part of the fun. You know, it was. I mean, that's what kids. At 11, 12 years old, we're from the inner city. It's the 1970s, a dilapidated city where all social services and everything else is gone, you know? So what do we, you know, so we're identifying, making our marks, trying to, you know, have some visibility, you know? I mean, on a sociological level, that's really, you know, in retrospect, it's not that we're aware of all this stuff, but that's what was going on. Anyway, so we weren't, like I said, we weren't aware of it, but, you know, for the future generations, which it would happen, you know. I mean, it's like we had, by the age of 16, you had basically aged out, you know. I mean, it was like, you know, time to move on to other, like girls or whatever your interests were, parties, finishing school, whatever, getting a job. So it was like I said, it was concentrated in that age group of 11 to 16, and then nowadays people in their 40s are, you know, go out riding on trains. It's crazy. But back then we would have thought they were cops, you know. Like it wasn't accepted. It was definitely not acceptable to have somebody that had facial hair writing spray painting. You know, it's like whose father is this, right? Anyway, but so one of the things that I like to praise is the fact that a child culture, a children's crusade, if you will, has spawned what has become over the generations. We're talking about, like, you know, most of us first generation guys are in our 60s, or some, like Richie Obama just turned 72. So then we're, you know, we've been, this thing has been around for 60 years now, you know, and it's become a global phenomenon. A global phenomenon that has spawned industry. It has created, like, I mean, there's companies that make graffiti spray paint. And I'm talking about like Montana. These are billion-dollar corporate companies. This is not like some small, you know, boutique kind of industry. So it's exploded, and it's something that was created by kids, you know, kids from the projects, kids from the hoods, you know, which is another phenomenon that very quickly, it wasn't strict, I mean, created and in the beginning, very much, you know, from like Washington Heights, Bronx, parts of Brooklyn. Bed-Stuy was a big innovator. And then later on, the Lower East Side, places, you know, places that were depressed and oppressed, you know. But it spread because middle class kids wanted to get in on it too. It was, I mean, you know, boys will be boys, right? We had kids from the Upper West Side, kids from like.
Do you feel like that's a correlation now?
Yeah, I'll take questions afterwards. And like, yeah, the kids from doorman buildings and stuff like that, and play, you know, like, or the Rockaways, which is, you know, like mostly middle class white kids, but especially back then, it was Irish, Italian, you know, cops, sanitation workers, they all lived out in the sticks basically, and their kids were living in them. So it's yeah. So that, I mean, that's the beauty of it, and in some of Sam's work, him being a later generation graffiti artist, he still utilizes or celebrates that imagery of graffiti culture, which is ingrained. It's in our DNA at this point. You know, we're just like, it's so much part. As a matter of fact, like I said, it's a global phenomenon, but the fact is that New York is the template. And when I've been to Canada and Spain and other places, and I've seen the graffiti there, and it always kind of like reflects the New York thing. They want to look like New York, you know. So that's a pretty special thing to have have that history. Also, at the same time, around the same time, in the early 70s, well, when New York was exploding with this culture, Philadelphia was doing something very similar. You know, we were not quite aware of each other at the time, except that some people would come, families who spent time in Philly and New York, and that's how that communication started to bleed through, you know. Same thing with how it spread through the boroughs, you know, like kids hanging out uptown, coming and bringing. It's just at New York, you know, it spread like wildfire, you know. Once again, the subway was a big connector, the bus system. We used to spray paint trucks a lot, because they went all over the city. As a matter of fact, my tag in the original Taking of the Pelham 1, 2, 3, the one with what's his name? I forgot it wasn't the second one was with Denzel Washington, but the first one was I forgot this, Walter Matthau version. They used clean trains, and then all the graffiti guys, we were like, oh wow, we're gonna go see the movie because we thought that we were gonna all see our names on the number 6 train, but they used clean trains. They refused to promote, and the MTA still does that. They do not promote graffiti. They don't have graffiti on the trains in their gift shop or anything like that. That's like the biggest taboo. But so they excluded all the any graffiti on the stations, on the trains. But there's a scene when they're delivering the money, the ransom money for these people that they had kidnapped on the train, and it's on the surface, and a truck blocks off the cop car, and they're like, man, and you see right on the side is my name and me and my partner, Bomb 1 and Snake 3. So we got like, that was our big props, you know, to get in on a film, which everybody was like, oh yeah, you know. Who didn't want that, right? The thing is that we were chasing fame, like local fame or notoriety or whatever. And the fact that it became a stylistic thing was fueled by the competitive factor, because you wanted it to look nicer than the next guy's. And some people had artistic abilities, and so the thing, you know, developed. It became a much more aesthetic thing, something nice to look at, you know, or that was what you were trying to achieve, you know. That was one of the ideas to obtain. During the 80s, much after a lot of us older guys had kind of, you know, left that aside, we had moved on, whatever. Some people that were in the army, some people were in jail, some people had jobs, whatever. It was more adult. A new generation had refined it and started selling. It kind of got wrapped up in the whole hip hop culture, you know, and it became like it became part of hip hop because that was the street aesthetic. So you know, graffiti was, being that it didn't come out of hip hop, it was born of itself, and then it faded into the whole thing, and that helped give it a fashion-y kind of and more accessible edge, and people started selling it out of galleries, you know, graffiti style artwork. And that's when it really started to explode in the culture. You know, it became cool. It became something that was like on clothing, and over the next decade, I mean, the next few decades, it just became bigger and bigger and bigger. And what we have today, you know, it's like it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Even the big advertising firms use the sides of trains. You know, they do those big stickers and stuff like that. But that, they didn't think of that. It wasn't their idea, right? Anyway, so yeah, so graffiti is something that we still have. Like a couple of weeks ago, we had the yearly Old Timers Day, where it's guys that that you've known since you were a kid, and it's a community. It's really it's truly it is a community of people that look out for each other, respect. In some cases, don't like each other, whatever. But you just kind of it's still it didn't die, it didn't die, and it's something that we're proud of and that we that we cherish because it's a huge part of our life. Even though I make completely different artwork now. I also did a project with a very famous artist. Me and Jean-Michel Basquiat in 1978 did a graffiti campaign, SAMO, which was social critiques that we would write. Of course, we were teenagers, so they were, from the mind of a couple of teenagers. But it got us a lot of notoriety, especially for Jean-Michel. It's like, he's Jean-Michel Basquiat, so. And that was a separate thing, but that was a graffiti-based, project that came from. Obviously, I was the graffiti artist because Jean-Michel was not part of that culture. He didn't grow up in it, and he didn't participate in that. So it was a different kind of. It was graffiti that was not just for other. Because one thing about writing, like subway writing and stuff, is it's a closed conversation. It's a graffiti writer writes graffiti for other graffiti writers. He's not trying to impress the general public for the most part. He's trying to talk to his peers. And what we were doing with the SAMO graffiti was talking to outside people. We wanted to talk to everyone. It was like saying, making social commentary. Like a typical SAMO would be like SAMO as an alternative to mind-wash religion. SAMO as an end to mass-produced individuality. All these wisecrack kind of things, to just making comments about how we felt about life, at that time. That's just a side note. Anyway. So the work I do now is still, even though it doesn't look so much like graffiti always, but it's more like the same old graffiti. It's more social commentary, and I use a lot of text in my work. You can't escape your roots. You really can't. Even though it evolves, hopefully it evolves and changes to somewhat. There's still elements of that attitude, of that life, of that history. And that's.
And you still in contact with all these guys?
A lot, yeah. Who's ever out there and part of the who stays in touch with. Yeah, I have their phone numbers. And people call me up constantly, or people email me or whatever, trying to find out. And I'm talking about like people writing books, etc., trying to find someone. Hey, you know where Coco is? I said, sure, I know. I spoke to him last week. So yeah, we stay in touch like that. Damien's seen a lot of events. He's been to a lot of events where he's witnessed that community within strictly old graffiti artists, because there's a big art community that is a community as well, but it's not strictly. All graffiti artists are not artists, Yeah.
They don't want to be co-artists.
They're just not. They didn't do that all their lives. They did graffiti, which is strictly that.
And how this SAMO group was created? What happened?
That's a convoluted and long story, but we used to use the expression SAMO. It was an expression that everybody used. A lot of people use. It meant same old shit, same old thing, whatever. And it became, but we changed the meaning of it into. He wrote this very funny. Jean was a good writer. He wrote we both contributed to our school newspaper, high school newspaper. That's how I met him. I met him after I went to high school of art and design for 3 years, and I got kicked out for being a truant and a graffiti artist. Because you don't go to school anymore. You're just busy going to the training arts and stuff like that. So it affects your schoolwork. So I had to redo the 11th grade. But I went to an alternative high school in Brooklyn Heights called City as a School. It's still around. It's in the West Village now. But back then there was a building here in Brooklyn Heights. And that's where I met Basquiat. He was young. He was a year and a half younger than me. So we had this experience. He wrote this story about a guy who was selling religions. A guy who had a kiosk and he would sell you a religion. It was crazy. It was a surreal kind of story. But the special of the day was he used the term SAMO he called the religion SAMO, and it was kind of funny between us because we had been using that expression. And it gave that word a whole new meaning. It was this religion, this cult kind of thing. And that's what we ran with. We tried to make it sound like a cult that was like offering all these life-changing experiences for you, you know? That's why SAMO is an alternative to God. SAMO is an alternative to this, that. Every alternative was an alternative to everything. And that was the format. That's how we wrote it. So it was conceptual art. It was conceptual art written in graffiti, and it was also pretty adult it was advanced for a couple of teenagers. So by the end of the year, we had gotten the attention of the Village Voice. The Village Voice was a free newspaper. Well, that became free. It was an art newspaper or art/music/theater newspaper that was circulated in New York back in the 70s, really. The 70s, 80s. And then by the time,
why did he bury SAMO?
huh?
Why did he bury? When it was buried, SAMO was buried or something like that?
Buried? No.
No.
There's nothing to bury.
Yeah.
It's a
well, he said
concept.
something, I heard
Oh, Sam was dead, he wrote.
so he's dead. Something
Yeah,
like that.
he wrote that to move, because he was moving on. He wanted to say that that's over. That era or period of my life is over. I'm moving on to. This is by the time he starts to get involved with that movie Downtown 81 and all that. He starts painting. Because he didn't paint before that. He drew. But he didn't paint.
Okay.
So he started painting around 81, 82.
Okay. So this is why SAMO was there.
Yeah, like later for that. Stop identifying me with that. It was his. That was his way of saying that.
I'm changing my style. Yeah, because I read something about the stanza. It's pronounced
It's confusing. Same old.
Same old.
It's like same old thing. The same old thing.
Same old.
The same old. No L.
Okay.
So it's convoluted. I wrote a book. I have a what year did I put that book out? 2018. So that book it kind of explains it because it's very convoluted. It's like you're only going to sit down and explain that to somebody. It was a writing thing. It was a conceptual literary. I mean, we weren't even aware of how kind of complicated it was, like the idea of it. But it was basically what it was a hype campaign. If you could take something and make people believe that it's something that doesn't exist, and make people believe that it exists, like it's a campaign, or it's hype, right?
Okay.
And that's what we were doing. We were experimenting with hype.
We didn't know you were doing that.
We didn't really we couldn't articulate that. We knew we were doing something there. But we didn't, it's all in retrospect that you realize, oh, that's what we were doing.
That's interesting. How things happen back in the anyway.